The second peculiar trait of wealthy people is that they care about time periods most people can't comprehend.
Yeah, I think most investors, especially professional investors, are interested in time periods of 30 days, 90 days, maybe a year. That's kind of their viewpoint of the investing world. What is the stock market going to do over the next 6 months or the next year? And I think that is nearly impossible to not only beat the market, but to think you can have any sort of control over your investments over a 1-year time horizon, because there's just too much competition, because that's what everyone is focusing on is the next year. And I think that one of the traits of successful people is they just detach themselves from that rat race of the next 6 months and the next year and are truly focusing on things that will last or that will play out over the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And most people just aren't willing to do that. They just don't have their view of the future extends over the next 12 months, maybe. So, one good example of this is Jeff Bezos. He talks about this a lot, that most businesses, if they can't get a payoff in the next 6 months or the next year on a project or a new business unit, they want nothing else. They want nothing to do with it. Amazon is one of the few companies that is willing to say, we're going to invest resources in this and we're not going to see any payback for 5 or 10 years. But 5 or 10 years down the road, they're going to have an extraordinary payoff. And since they're one of the only businesses that's willing to do that, they kind of have that lane to themselves. And that's true for individual investors too. We talk about it all the time because I think it's one of the most important things in investing is to have if you have a longer time frame than your competitors, you have an edge over them.
Things change so quickly. So if for someone to make a decision based on what's happening right now can be such a huge mistake, and you can be proven wrong very quickly. And this year is a great illustration of that, because the stock market had one of the worst starts ever this year. And now it is at a point where it's actually up for the year. And I have spoken with financial advisors whose clients have called and said, sell, I don't want to be in this market when it was down 10, 15%. And if they could not talk those clients out of it, those clients made a big mistake.
That's right.
Also, I was thinking of Chipotle comes to mind, right? Like they've taken a huge hit because of some food poisoning issues. And I think I overheard Tom Gardner, because we have an open office. It's very easy to overhear Tom Gardner. He was saying he's speaking at a restaurant, a convention of like restaurant executives. Mm-hmm. And he was asking them, he's like, so what do you guys think of Chipotle? And and they're like, oh, shaking their head, man, rough. It's so rough. And he's like, well, but what do you think about Chipotle in like 5-10 years? And they're like, oh, they're going to be fine. They're going to be great. So being able to not focus on the fact that Chipotle is giving people really upset stomachs right now.
That's right.
It's hard, though. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard both to think long term, but I think it's also hard for business owners like Bezos. They're not all Bezos. For even them to have like the focus to look at the long term. So many companies have short attention spans too.
And a lot of it is the companies effectively have to, because their shareholders demand it from them. So it's not that the CEOs don't have the temperament to be long-term thinkers. It's that they're just trying to hold on to their jobs. And if they really took a long-term approach, they wouldn't have their jobs anymore. And it's rare. I think companies like Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon and Google, either through their share ownership because the CEO controls the company, or just because they've done such a good job at communicating their vision to investors, it's rare that you get a company where shareholders actually let you take a truly long-term approach. It's extremely rare. There are only a handful of companies where that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. At the annual Berkshire Hathaway meetings, we were at one a couple years ago. It's actually where Bro and I met.
The first time. I remember
that. Your eyes lock across the room.
So at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, they have, as a shareholder, you can vote on different, to vote for the board of directors and other business decisions that are made at a company. Shareholders get to vote. And Buffett kind of jokingly says, so if you're a shareholder, you can submit your votes, but I have my votes in my pocket, so it's already decided. Because he controls the company.
Right,
so
right.
And it's the same at Facebook, it's the same at Google, where the founders and CEOs control the companies, so they can do whatever they want.